All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. We'll wait another minute or so here as people are starting to get logged in. See more and more people joining, so we'll wait about another minute or so.
So I don't know where everyone is from, but maybe put in your chat the common where you dialing in from in the chat, because I'm dialing in from Salt Lake City and we just got a few inches of snow this morning. I was trying to find the picture of, there we go, of my boy and I shoveling snow. Oh no, my green screen isn't allowing it to show up. Oh, there we are. You can get that picture. You've seen people shovel snow before, but we got like 3 or 4 inches this morning. Anyone else have snow today? Tempe, Arizona, not snow in the forecast.
Definitely not
Texas.
where I live either. That's crazy. Already to spring on the East Coast, southern East Coast over here.
Nice.
All right, well, it looks like most of the folks are joining. So thank you all for joining us here today and welcome to today's webinar. It's the SDR Structure and Enablement that win big. A few quick housekeeping notes here before we dive in. This webinar will be recorded and we will send out the slides in recording. Also, we'd love for you to join in today's discussion, so please share any questions or comments that you have for today's presenters in the chat feature, and we will make sure to have this be as interactive and helpful for everyone as possible. All right, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. I am Abby Orlowski. I will be the moderator for today's session. I'd like to introduce today's presenters, Scott Logan of Chronologic and David Dulany of Tenbound. Thank you guys both for joining us and welcome.
Hey, thanks a lot. I mean, I'm excited to dive in.
Likewise.
Awesome. All right, so Scott and David have lots of exciting insights to share with you all today, but before we kick things off, we're going to help frame the discussion a little more. So we're going to get started with a quick poll here. So get it up on the screen. So you take just a moment for that. So what is the purpose, seeing as today's topic revolving around SDR structure and enablement? So as we start to get a better idea, we can help kind of tailor that conversation. So what is the purpose of your SDRs? Is it to keep closers closing because your AEs are maybe not prospecting? Is it to filter leads, convert marketing leads, only appointment setting, qualifying leads, or maybe they're a strategic farm club to help fill other roles and departments at the company? All right, so it's multiple choice here. I see a couple more coming in. Let's go ahead and end this and we'll share the results here. All right, Scott and David, if you can see the results on the screen here, are you surprised by this? Are these results what you expected?
Yeah, I think that number one is probably most likely 100%. Otherwise, we wouldn't have SDRs. So that might be you don't have an SDR team yet. But one thing that I do like is that we have a small percentage as appointment setters only. I think that that's something that everyone's going to be more effective if an SDR can actually do some qualifying, even maybe do a light demo or more than just BANT discovery, but like basic discovery for your solution.
David,
Yeah,
thoughts on
definitely.
these results?
And you know, there's sort of a spectrum that it goes across, and it's interesting that not everyone has a farm club for other departments in the company, or a farm team, because that usually comes up a lot, especially if you're in more of a high velocity sales position, to set up that structure. So we only got a couple of votes on that, which is interesting.
All right, let's go ahead and dive in.
So here we see Rick Bradbury is the principal analyst for GotoMarket. for Forrester. He's been in that role now for just a little bit of time, as he is the new leader of this segment for Forrester. And in a recent blog that he did, he ranked like the top 5 areas that B2B leaders are prioritizing their changes. And number 1 he has as buyers never wanted lead chasing, so why are we still doing it? Buyers are in control now. Buyers are wanting to have more control of the process, especially as the whole thing we've heard before is millennials are not just part of the workforce now. Many of them are decision makers, since they are in their early to late 30s at this point, per like a 1980 to 90 or whatever birth date, and they don't want content, they don't want email spam, they don't want cold calls, discovery questions. Where do they want us to interject as marketing and sales leaders, and how do we meet their higher expectations is a question that everyone's trying to answer right now. I don't know, David, if you have any other commentary here to align from your experience at Tenbound.
Yeah, I mean, and with everyone on the call, by the way, if you have questions, we want to hear what your structure looks like and how it goes up against some of the stuff that we're talking about, and specific questions that you have. So definitely, as we go through this, chime in and ask questions. I want to make sure that this is really valuable. So this is the clash, and this is like the structural decision point that everyone is trying to figure out right now. Because on one hand, you have the changing buyer behavior, and if you think about it from your own perspective, how do you buy things today? From a B2C perspective, when you use your phone and go through Amazon or eBay or different aspects like that, the buyers out there, they really are seeking that seamless process that they're used to from making all the other decisions. Then they go into work, or go into their room and work from home, and they're faced with a completely different structure that we have in B2B, which is first the SDR to the AE to the CSM, and how it's usually structured today. And there's a clash. And I think that probably most of the people that are looking at these structures are trying to figure out what works today, because there's so many different pieces of advice out there for how to structure your team and in the best way possible. And this is the clash that we're dealing with. So.
All right, so let's dive into the very first topic, which is not contentious whatsoever. It's not even a hot topic, really, because we all know the answer. Should marketing own SDRs? And as a marketing leader, yeah, they should own SDRs. Okay, next slide, Abby. Just kidding. So maybe if we could have in the chat here, if anyone has marketing owning some of their SDRs, let's get a string going there in the chat. But this is something that we face a lot and wonder, when should we not? Here we have some leading questions on that. But what are you seeing right now, David, as you go through the hundreds of sales teams that you help? What are they doing, and how are they doing it?
Yeah, I mean, this is the classic, like, tastes great, less filling type of, I don't know if anybody gets that one, but the conventional wisdom has always been that they roll up to sales, right? It's a sales position. You've got the mentorship relationship. Most SDRs are getting into it because they want to become AEs. But the interesting shift that's been happening with our clients. So Tenbound works with sales development teams, to help them with their playbook and with training and coaching and things like that. Is we're seeing more and more sales development teams roll up to marketing. And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, because ultimately the SDR organization, it is a marketing function in that they're charged with building sales pipeline, qualified sales pipeline that's going to close at a decent conversion rate. And so especially now with the move to digital marketing, everything's tracked, everything's organized in a way that the function really works in lockstep with all the different things that marketing does traditionally. And so we're seeing, I mean, anecdotally on the ground that most of our clients, are coming from a perspective of having them roll into marketing. And but it's still, the conventional wisdom is, it's a sales function.
Yeah. Katie mentioned something. If you want us to mention your comment without your name, chat it to hosts and panelists if you want. If you don't mind your comment being in the group, go ahead and just chat it to everyone. But Katie says we had SDRs or BDRs living under marketing and it didn't work well because they were connected from sales. And I blame marketing for that, if that is the scenario. As Abby, she leads as a director of demand gen and ABM for us. And one thing that we always say is you need to spend as much time with sales as you do with the marketing team. It's something that is super, super important. So I would say that would be a huge red flag if you're going to have marketing own some SDRs, and it's because the two teams don't work well together. It seems counterintuitive, but it might actually make the situation incredibly worse, to the point here that Katie has. I don't know what your relationship is between the two, but if you're disconnected already, it's not going to make things better.
Agreed. Yes.
Yeah.
You want to go back to that slide real quick, Abby? I think you should launch the poll, but I want to talk through these real quick too. So I'll let you launch the poll here real quick.
Okay. Yes. Sorry. As you guys are diving into some of the details here, we'd love to get everyone's perspective on the call in terms of what your environment looks like currently.
Yeah. We have someone who mentioned that they moved SDRs into marketing last year and they love it. They're seeing leads come into the funnel. They're more respected and appreciated of the marketing team, the SDRs themselves. I would agree with that. I've been in a scenario where I had the SDRs, and the connection between the priority of the campaigns and the talk tracks and managing, not just sending over a bunch of leads from different sources, and they all get the same pitch that you would do for a cold person, a cold lead, makes a big difference in conversion rates. So I do think that is important. For these questions here, what is your inbound traffic volume? I think obviously if it's high, you would want to start to consider having the leads or the marketing having their own SDR team, because the prioritization is going to be a disaster if you have a blended team or people who are doing outbound and mixing in the inbound with it. It's just incredibly complicated of an environment. As far as the ABM and go-to-market strategy, what would you say on that, David, as you go through teams that have like a inbound, outbound type approach and having those live in marketing or sales?
Yeah. So, and just going back to Katie's point, there's a lot of factors that are involved in where they sit, and if it's causing conflict, and you still have the old silos, between sales and marketing, where sales is mad at marketing because they're not producing enough leads, and marketing's mad at sales because they're not closing enough of the leads that they actually produce. So if you're walking into that kind of environment, then this is going to be problematic, because if the SDRs roll up to marketing, then they're immediately, at odds with the sales team. And there's a lot of finger pointing, that the SDR team sucks because they're rolled to marketing, right? Or on the flip side, if they roll up to sales, but nobody's mentoring them, nobody's coaching them, there's no, upskilling happening, then the marketing team's throwing the leads over and nothing's happening with them. So then there's a lot of finger pointing on that end. So first, it's kind of like, and now this is, I'm not going to say how old I am, but this has been happening for a million years. And so first you have to take a step back. And is SDR in the DNA of your company? So are there marketers who were SDRs? Are there sales leaders who used to be SDRs? This is happening now, right? Because it's been 10 years since the SDR thing really came up. And so if there's a good understanding of the value that the team brings, and everyone's sort of on the same page, then okay, let's put it where it's going to get the right. And ABM is a perfect example, because we've got a diagram on the next, or within the slides, where if you're going after accounts, big, huge whale accounts, you need everybody. It's almost like a football play. You've got X's and O's, and everyone's doing all their different activities to try to break into the account. You have to have your marketer, your SDR, your account rep, even CSMs, all on the same page to try to break into that big whale. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Let's see what these results are. And as we look at those results, there's a couple comments that came in that are really interesting. One of them says, the SDR team falls under sales, but they are funneling MQLs, or marketing qualified leads, to the SDRs. It seems to be going well. I think that's probably the most common scenario, where there's like a blended single team that handles both outbound and inbound, and MQLs goes to them. And I see that more often than not. And your internal politics probably handles the scenario on how well that's going. But then another person said, outbound SDRs go to sales and inbound SDRs are in marketing. And I just say that one because we have an entire talk track on that in just a minute. The last one, where Katie explains a little bit more, which is something, David, even in our prep with Abby on this didn't come up. Marketing and sales is aligned, but the disconnect was in terms of career growth. An MDR, or marketing development rep, had less of a career growth or alignment to becoming a rep than an SDR, which would roll under sales, did. So that is also very interesting, because sales does want that person to become a rep. Marketing wants that SDR, just selfishly, to become, or MDR, to become the best MDR, and then just stay in that job forever. We're not a farm league for a larger goal of getting reps, though. You should have that viewpoint probably.
Yeah, I mean,
so it rolls into marketing or not. We have 33% and 44%, and then a few yes and no's mixed in there. So maybe about half and half with a few outliers.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting point, because there's a couple things that Katie brought up. One is the hiring plan, for the people. What do the people want to do that are coming into the organization? And do they really want to get into sales? And they're pretty sure about that. That's the career path. Or are they still kind of making up their mind, and they kind of want to try like a few different things, which is great, and that's that farm league. You're hiring these super smart, amazing people who are going to stick around for a few years. And then I would also look at what's your sales enablement plan, for these people. If they're sitting in marketing, nobody's paying attention to them, they're not getting any sales training, they're not getting any sales skills, there's no mentorship, then that's a huge issue, because they're just going to wallow in inbound leads and not get better and be able to make a bigger impact on the company. So you got to look at the sales enablement program for them, to get upskill to the next level.
Yeah, and to that point, someone came in with, in the past 4 months, they've promoted 3 SDRs to AEs. Good on you. That's awesome that there is a clear path, that team morale is up when that happens. The other folks want to try harder to get to that point. I think those are all good things. So per some of the questions that are alluding to this, let's go ahead and dive to the next topic here, Abby, with the inbound, outbound blended. Starting with inbound, This is a bit of a word chart, but maybe just for talking points or for reviewing the slides afterwards, some of the things that we looked at were marketing alignment. Maybe there should be some role into marketing for what we talked about before, if there's high inbound volume, if you have strong prioritization rules in place. If you don't, it could be a mess. The handoff process is set. You need to have one that is actually pretty solid because of that whole, if it doesn't roll into sales, how do you manage that with the AEs? And then concerns are, you know, it can cause a little bit of chaos if an inbound is on the sales side, too many talk track variations, things we talked about before. Outbound only, if you want to click into that next one. You know, it's good to have an ABM approach. It's good to have them roll into sales if they're outbound only. Raw sales personality, like, are you wanting to be a sales rep after this? Some people may say they want to be a marketing person if it's an MDR role, and that may actually be better. You know, who knows? You're connected to marketing campaigns, helping plan them. Maybe there is a difference, to David's point, on the career path that they say that they want to be on when you hire them. And then, you know, some concerns, lead chasing burnout. You're not getting the hot leads. You're chasing down lists, and that can be grueling. We actually had a whole webinar on that a few weeks ago on SDR burnout. You can go ahead and check that out too and see from our feeds. And then the blended concerns that we addressed before. You need lots of training. You need to decide if it goes into sales or marketing. You need to have really strong marketing and sales alignment anyway, but really do in this situation. So there's some needs if you want to go one route or not, and concerns one route or not. But I'm going to pass this over to you and not just read bullet points off a screen. With the point that I thought was most interesting that you made, David, when we were talking through this, was when do you want to turn a blended team into an inbound outbound team? And what is that evolution? Do you even start with blended?
Yeah, so I mean, I think this goes along with the growth cycle of the company. So at first, if you have tons of inbound leads and nobody's really following up on them, and you need to do some outbound prospecting, you'll just get sort of a hybrid, you know, Swiss Army knife type of person who can do everything. And hopefully they're an amazing individual that can grow with the company and maybe even become the SDR manager at some point after they create the process. But at some point, you know, we start to have so many inbound leads that they can't follow up on all of them, or outbound starts to go down because they're too busy trying to follow up on the inbound leads. Or, you know, let's face it, I mean, having a list of pre-qualified inbound leads is a lot better than having to cold call a bunch of people, right? So at some point, they're totally different jobs. And that's really important to understand. Inbound SDR and outbound SDR are completely different jobs. They take different personalities. They take, you know, different skill sets. They take different training. And there's a lot of factors. So we always recommend, you know, if you're at the point where you're starting to drop plates and not be able to maximize, bifurcate the team and create an inbound and an outbound team. So that's my rant on that. And then the other quick thing, since I have the mic, Abby can mute this. I got one from an anonymous attendee, which is cool to remain scatterly and anonymous. It said, shouldn't they work under AEs and sales? And there's a lot of advantages if they work together on the same team, you know, having that mentorship relationship. Yes, 100%. And it's not necessarily that they're reporting into the sales organization, but they're very aligned with the AEs that are on the team so that they can get that coaching and mentorship. Now, well, we've seen the opposite as well, in that the AEs are like, the SDRs suck. Like, I don't want to spend any time with these SDRs because they just leave the company. after I spend all this time, or they don't produce any meetings, or they're not supporting me. So we don't want to be at the mercy of what an AE thinks about SDRs. We want to maximize the efficiency of the SDR function. And you know, if the AEs want to provide that mentorship and support, great. But you know, it doesn't necessarily you know, make a difference on where you align them in marketing and sales.
Yeah, that's a good point. I just put that question in the chat for us to kind of talk through. How many of your, and again, an awesome thing that came up now that didn't come up during the prep for this is how many SDRs are taken under the wing by an AE if they're aligned with them or not aligned with them, I guess, formally or informally. Is that something that is done? Because I've seen when you do align SDRs with an AE, not only do they get a little bit of extra sales training, they put themselves in a situation where their success is more increased because they're not just getting overall sales success. It's, I want deals that look like this, because every rep's version of I want deals that look like X is different for almost every rep. Some don't care what it is, bottom barrel, I'll go after anything. I just need to close deals, especially when you're in a commercial segment. And even on the enterprise segment, you're finding AEs that they have certain levels of criteria, though at a much higher level, because you don't want to go chase an enterprise account that wastes 2 quarters or a quarter just to go find out that that is a no. But are people doing that? Or are you seeing that happen, I guess, because if it's not formal? Are you seeing that, David, when reps do that?
Yeah, I mean, so if you try to formalize that relationship, sometimes it works and sometimes not so much, because a lot of the best sales reps that are like $1 million, you know, W-2s are complete lone wolves. Like they don't even put stuff in Salesforce, like, you know, and they write everything on a piece of paper and stuff like that. They're just really good at sales, enterprise sales, and they understand that. And you know, if you go to them and say, hey, you have to spend, you know, an hour a day with your SDR, they'll laugh in your face, right? I mean, so you know, if you try to formalize that, you know, sometimes it might work. And there's a lot of great sales reps out there who really make that a big part of their job. And they understand that by working with the SDR and developing that relationship, that they're going to get more at bats and, you know, have a bigger pipeline. So, yeah.
Yeah, someone wrote a note in, which is what I was looking for, because I have seen this as well. We work 1-to-1 AEs. I've seen 1-to-1 or 1 SDR to 2, depending on your volume, that do get taken under the wing of the reps. And they really seem to flourish, book more meetings, and then get promoted to reps within the same year. And we're wish that more reps would actually take this initiative with their SDR. The only time I've seen that backfire is if you rotate your SDRs in these pods too much. Like if it's 2 months or 3 months and that's all you get with them, they may think that the time is not worth it to put the time into training them, because it does take maybe a good 1.5 months, 2 months to get them rolling. And then once you really get them rolling in a way that you're in sync, and then you have like a every quarter rotation of SDRs, what I found is that they just give up. They're like, it's not worth it anymore. By the time I get them ramped up to where I want them, they're not producing for me, they're producing for someone else. And now Sally's getting my awesome SDR and I'm having to retrain someone from scratch. So I would be careful about that. But I have seen it work as well.
And you know, just to reiterate, if you're at a company that's big enough, the sales enablement, you know, department or team or whatever, like person, there's got to be somebody who's involved in sales enablement. And that includes training, coaching, you know, getting them online resources and stuff like that. Like that's really the owner of the development of this. Because then if you've got a regular coaching and training program for the SDRs that's happening, regardless of their relationship with the AE, then they're gonna, some people are gonna take off like a rocket. Some people are just gonna kind of flatline, but it's not all on the AE to, the AE can kind of be the salt on the meal versus the whole steak. I don't know if that's.
Yep. Let's go to the next topic, and I'm going to answer one of the questions here that was chatted in as it relates to it. So one question that was asked is, can inbound leads be automated with tools? For example, if a demo request comes in, that lead goes to the AE, but if the meeting is a no-show, then it gets passed to the SDR for follow-up. And then the SDR has like a little bit of an inbound outbound motion. And I think that type of a combination is actually a pretty good practice, especially if your SDRs are not the greatest at discovery, or your company just says, no, we're not going to have our SDRs do deep discovery. They do light discovery, and then the AE does it. So I think that you could have those meetings set up for the SDR if you're one of those organizations where the SDR can go all the way up to a demo with discovery, or even do a light demo, depending on what product you're selling. But I think that is the right motion, is whoever's going to do the discovery can get the meetings that are just booked for them. And then we've actually switched to a model here at Chronologic where if someone doesn't convert within that first like 2-week period, 1-week period of engagement, then that goes to an assigned account rep for that rep for a set amount of time, depending on your sales cycle. And they then can go into it, whether it be the AE or the SDR. Typically the SDR would then try and get more traction within that company, taking more of an ABM motion where they're like not just going after that one person, but maybe the people on that person's team and that person, to get them more engaged with more content because there was some kind of interest there. And when you have this, as you can see here on the right, the sales pod, where marketing is overlaying everything and kind of feeding the beast, if you will. But then you have one SDR aligned to 2 AEs, and then that CSM is either like a pooled CSM or an assigned CSM based on the industry or business segment. If you get them going in sync, it is like this flywheel where you're just constantly setting customers up for success, and everyone has a good rhythm, and you have some good inbound outbound lead volume, and then you can segment that out based on your own territory, verticals, commercial versus enterprise, however you want to set it up. I won't speak to your side on the left there, David, so I'll let you go to that route, and then maybe we can shift the group discussion to this.
Yeah, I mean, you made a lot of good points. So one is that marketing operations and sales operations are sort of starting to blend into like a revenue operations function. And if you think about it, there's so many different systems and tools and optimizations that you can make to really juice the SDR team that in a lot of companies, it's sort of left to the SDR manager and maybe a sales manager to try to cobble all these tools together and make it effective. And there's a lot of leakage, in that setup. So one of the advantages of working in marketing, for example, is if they have a dedicated marketing operations person who's in charge of making sure that the SDR function is optimized, that can make a huge difference in productivity. And even if it's a blended RevOps approach, someone who's essentially like our market map that just came out has over 500 tools and services and different firms that are created to support SDRs. Like, how do you make sense of that? How do you vet all these things? How do you put them together? It's critical that somebody is really good at doing that. And so I'll just stop there, Scott, before I go into that chart. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the sales structure should be set up and synced from marketing ops all the way through to sales ops. I know that in organizations where I've seen and been a part of that work the smoothest together is where even if you don't have this new RevOps team that's like stands in between marketing and sales, and there's like a dotted line to marketing and a dotted line to sales for some people, you can create that even with a traditional hierarchy where the ops folks, the sales leaders, and the demand gen leaders meet, I don't know, monthly or even one time quarterly for a long time, just to kind of make sure that their processes are understood across the business. And then there can be some micro teams for different campaigns that go along the way, where you have some bi-weekly or monthly meetings or something that you're still aligning there. But it's that communication of which sales tools to use when, and which ones are effective and not effective in order to increase your conversion rates, and to not just focus on volume, but to focus on your conversion rates, because that's where you're really going to be able to get the most out of your current resources, because more is not always better. But as far as the journey goes and how Tenbound describes it here, I think is really good. So maybe this would be a good transition to jump into that. And then we can get more of these questions mixed in here after you do that. Whoops.
Definitely. And so structurally, you know, there are some companies that are structured like this. There's a book that came out that everybody should read called Death of the SDR. And essentially the guy is trying to blow up the usual SDR structure that you see and meld it more along the graphic on the left is essentially the HubSpot flywheel, and it's what we've been talking about. So you start with the customer in the middle and their buyer journey. Another book I would highly recommend is Building a Story Brand, and understanding what is the buyer journey of your potential customer, and then building your organizational structure around that buyer journey. So the companies call this sort of the go-to-market team or the growth team, and they're starting to blow up the traditional silos to really be able to serve the customer where they are and the way that they're used to being, you know, dealt with in a B2C environment. And so it's essentially structured along the way that HubSpot has it, where you're creating demand. And that's all the different brand things, you know, the content marketing, all the different things that we do. You're converting that demand, and that's essentially taking a bunch of all the inbound and the targets that we have and putting that into a meeting for a sales rep, or even a self-service model where you can buy the product, and then understanding how to fulfill that and get that information that you're getting from the customer back into all of your marketing. And, you know, instead of a chart going up and to the right, it's just essentially an expanding circle. So it's a different structure. It's new. It's, you know, it definitely, it's trying to get rid of the silos that still exist in a lot of these organizations.
Yeah, we backed into that discussion a little bit, but where the rubber meets the road is creating these pods, and it goes along with someone who chatted in. How do we create more of that, I guess, relationship amongst the AEs and the SDRs to up-level the game of the AEs and the SDRs by collaborating in that really constructive, like, let's progress our ability on how we do this together role. And I think that if you align these teams and then maybe have the AE as like the linchpin to the whole process, having them lead these meetings, where I know that when we did have alignment in the past and it worked well, there was a weekly meeting between the AE and the SDR. The SDR obviously had two of them. Typically they're aligned to two AEs just because of how the funnel works, but you could have these group sessions with all four of these people, or even all five of these people, if you include a specific demand gen person that aligns to you or something, And that can create that relationship, and take them out to lunch once a month. Like maybe marketing takes them out to lunch once a month, and then the AEs have a weekly meeting with the SDR or something along those lines. But if the AE and the SDR aren't talking on a weekly basis, there are just bound to be large gaps in what happens, and then marketing suffers, and then the SDRs feel frustrated and the AEs get frustrated. So if you're at least communicating on a weekly basis at the AE SDR level, you're going to be just naturally creating some trust there, which will also allow for better results.
Yeah. And if you're new to this and you're trying to get this going, it can be as simple as just putting a Trello board or a Kanban board up on the screen with the campaigns that are coming up, the ones that are happening right now, and then the follow-up, and just being able to meet with the AE and the marketer who's working on those campaigns and the SDR and be like, okay, where are we at? Okay, we've got some conferences coming up, we've got webinars coming up, we're targeting this particular vertical. Okay, just let's get aligned and on the same page with this so that we can maximize the efforts of everything that we're doing, and then, if the AE decides to blow it off, they don't show up, the marketer hasn't touched the Trello board in a week, then there's deeper, systemic problems that you need to figure out. So.
And you don't even have to use a Trello board. You could even just use that AE's pipeline report or funnel report that they have in Salesforce as your Trello board, because essentially you're working these deals. Marketing needs to know where they're sourced from as maybe like an observer listener to that conversation, to hear what talk tracks the SDRs and AEs are actually getting traction with. The marketing team can see if any of those leads that are in that AE's pipeline, or the ones that they care about in the pipeline, were even touched or sourced by marketing. Like if the marketing shows up and all of a sudden there's nothing there that resembles marketing, then they got a lot of work to do. And if there is some alignment there, then they can listen to see, are the talk tracks that we're putting forth in these events and these in this content, is it actually aligned to what they're discussing as they start to close the deal, or at least get it to mid-funnel. So there's a lot to be learned just as an observer from those discussions as well. So if you have any other questions along these topics, still chat them in, we'll still address them. But for the folks who this is kind of like, okay, we've heard this is good insights, but what about what's next? We can jump into that. Product-led growth. Put your hands up in the audience, or just chat a yes or no if you have any product-led growth initiatives, or you've heard about what this even is and you're familiar with it. We have a 1. Because SDRs and AEs can all align to this, and it's very important that they do, because product-led growth does not mean death to sales. It means what we were talking about before with Rick, where the sales leaders are actually used differently and placed differently than just the gateway to becoming a customer. So we're really removing them, the SDR and the sales rep, from being the gatekeeper to, do you get to buy from us? You have to talk to me first, into people want to buy things the way they want to buy it. I was trying to explain this to my wife to see if this talking track would even work over the weekend. And she immediately said, oh, so it's kind of like when you read all the reviews before you go buy, and then you kind of go through, you just go and buy after you've seen confidence that this is the way to go. And yes, that is kind of how it is. You kind of go through the sales process through experiencing the product. You sign up for a trial, you sign up for a demo, you get a free account made that gives you very limited restrictions, but you get to taste what it's like to use that platform. And then at certain points, you then have sales triggered to interject into that discussion. So Rick put it really well in a comment he made, though it wasn't written in his blog. SDRs need to become more like CSMs with product-led growth. They should engage in moments of the buyer's journey that are prime for upselling them or cross-selling them. So moving from the free to the paid, basic, or moving from the basic to the enterprise, much like LinkedIn does. You get to use LinkedIn for free, and then you can buy your own license, and then LinkedIn gets triggered that you have 20 paid individual licenses. Well, that SDR is going to call the marketing and sales leader saying, hey, I can give you these licenses for cheaper with more functionality. And by the way, let's expand it to your whole team. That is even a product-led motion. So we're already seeing it and using it today. But I think that the main point here is that it's more so aligning the SDR to this process as opposed to replacing sales in general. I don't know. What have you seen, David?
Agreed. Yeah. I mean, you still, I think we're 10 years out from completely getting rid of all people, on the go-to-market side, because, the value of that human interaction is being able to connect the dots for people and help them to understand how they can really leverage the tool and expand the return on the investment. And then at the same time, it's a great go-to-market strategy because, I'll give you a perfect example. I won't name the company, but they essentially, I was using it for free. I didn't even realize it. And I needed to pay someone through it. And I got an error message. It turns out that you have to upgrade in order to be able to pay someone through this. And I was like, all right, so I upgraded. Today, right before the webinar, I get an email from the SDR saying, hey, really excited to have you on board. And let me walk you through this to really maximize the value of this investment that you're making. And, there are probably 5 other competitors have been cold emailing me and calling me for the last 5 years. But I am kind of curious to see, how I can leverage this. So, if the SDR reached out and was just like, do you want to buy some more licenses, or can I talk to somebody else on your team and blah, 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 that wouldn't be as effective. So, when we were talking about this earlier, it's the SDR sort of turns from an outbound cold caller type of person to almost more like a concierge to, help people to understand the value of what they have and potentially expand that at their company.
Yeah, and we had a lot of people talking about career progression earlier in the webinar on the chat here. And what a better way to provide more career progression than to have your SDR more like a CSM or a concierge as they become a sales rep, or maybe now it's easier for them to become an enterprise grade CSM, because their discussions are no longer, how can I convert someone to a discovery call, catching them off guard on a local presence blind phone call within 30 seconds. And that is like half of their work. And the other half of the work is getting through 4 or 5 banter meta questions. Now they're talking to someone who's warm, so they're not having the grueling part of the job as the primary part of their job. There's already some success metrics that they can bring to the table there, most likely, a discussion about use cases, about concerns, and then a much easier cross and upsell conversation, as in your comparison, David, they were saying, let's make you successful, as opposed to, hey, have you heard of our solution instead? It's great. And you're in for a BANT conversation. So, maybe we could even start some of this progression today, even if you don't have a formal product-led growth model, when you start looking at account management or having SDRs dip into the pond of cross-sell upsell with your CS team, because CS teams typically aren't hired with this cross-sell upsell motion as part of their, work DNA or what they like to do.
Yeah. I mean, there's a very successful data company in the SDR world. I won't name them, but they have an entire SDR team that just calls into the installed base, and they work in sync with the CSM to if they've only sold 4 licenses to a 100-person company, how do we sell 8? How do we sell 12, and they work together to make sure that they don't do it in like a creepy way. It's all about being a concierge, showing people the value that they can get, and expanding that relationship. And so it's just, and so if you're not a PLG company and you're listening to this, you're like, how does this relate? If it's coming at some point, most companies will go to market like this in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. And so you got to think about, how do we leverage the SDR team to really maximize the value of this approach, and versus just grafting on the old strategy that we have been using for a million years.
Yeah. I love the quote from U.S. General Shinzeki, where he says, if you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less.
Yeah.
So you better start, maybe adapt now with some cross-selling motion so that you're ready when product and marketing come down, or maybe even just your product team comes down with your C-suites and says, this is the new motion. And instead of saying, oh my goodness, we are now out of a job, say, I got this. Here's how we can align to enhance the product-led growth vision that we're trying to create now as a team. And you can be a part of that discussion instead of defending yourselves. Let's go ahead and move forward to the summary slide here, Abby, as we close out.
Yeah, and Scott, real quick, Jacqueline asked a really good question. I don't know if you're still on the call, but she was like, what's the time frame for enabling the SDRs, and how should that look? And I mean, we would recommend look at it like a 12-month university course, because most SDRs are pretty new, and I mean, most of the enablement for SDRs is like a 1-week program, with a couple of online modules, and good luck. I mean, that's essentially what it is. I mean, I would look at it as, we have a great opportunity to learn not only the soft skills, the cold calling, the following up on leads, and all the different things that they need to be great at, but also, how much do they know about the industry that they're calling on? How much do they know about the vocabulary? How much do they know about the people, the pain points, even the product? How deep are they into the product and how your product solves, the problem? Because if you invest in them and their success, they could potentially become a great marketer or a great salesperson for your company, and be there for 5 years, versus most of the time they're gone, within 12 to 18 months, because they're just sort of on their own. Yeah. Sorry, that's my rant. Thanks, Jacqueline.
That's a great, especially since you made a comment during our prep for this, that this is like alphabet soup with acronyms. And
yeah,
if you think this is alphabet soup with acronyms on just marketing and sales terms, think of someone coming in new, having to learn the marketing and sales slang that we've all learned over the course of your career. And now you have to learn the acronyms that are specific to your industry on top of that. So they don't even know what's going on during your training sessions because it's alphabet soup. And then they're trying to learn the acronyms that are part of the discovery calls that they're now having for the first time, which is alphabet soup. And it can be quite confusing. So I think you're right. It's just a constant training mechanism. We have them every week for our team. You don't have to be as thorough as maybe David's or ours are, but it should be on a regular basis, and probably more so for the SDRs, but don't forget the AEs and the SEs as well.
100%. And one last quick thing is, imagine if you hired a football team and you just like the first week you showed them a football and how to tie their shoes and watched a couple of videos. And then you got to the end of 6 months, you're like, well, how come you're not in the Super Bowl? And it's like, there's a lot that has to go into that. And the last quick thing there is, if you want to know what's going on in SDR land from a like on the ground perspective, everybody on the call, you need to follow life.long.sdr on Instagram. and follow them today, and then go back in and read all the memes, because they literally they're looking at it from the perspective of the SDR, and it's really not pretty out there, so, and it's very inappropriate and hilarious, but we all need a break in the day, right?
Yeah, some people online are saying that they know that one. Yeah, that's awesome. I do not know that one, so I'm going to go out and read it.
I tried to get the guy to come on a podcast and talk to me, and he's not responding to my DM. So, or I don't know who it is, but it's so funny. But anyways.
And if you need a quick SDR morale boost, every SDR team gets in those lulls. One thing that I've done, and it was beneficial for me as a marketing leader, but also it was fun for the SDR team, is I think we did it for like a 90-minute period. All the sales leaders and marketing leaders and demand gen teams went in and were the SDRs for 90 minutes, where the marketing team was pinned against the sales leaders on who could convert more leads to meetings in that 90-minute period with the same list. And it was really fun, because the SDRs are sitting around. This is when we were all in the office, but they were sitting around watching this all happen. You could even do it virtually and have like a recording thing, but we had a lot of fun with it. On top of that, where we actually had like the office commentary, where we sat in a separate office and people came in and gave their opinions of what was going on at the time in a satirical approach. It was a ton of fun, and just like I said, we got a big spike in morale boost that quarter. So anyway, let's go ahead and close out with the next closing slide here. As you know, this was brought to you by Chronologic and Tenbound. So if you need help with any of these things, we can absolutely help you out. On the Chronologic side, we automate the sending of calendar invites, and are finding that we get to a yes faster for our leads with having basically eliminating lead chasing, or bringing it down to a very minimum at the very least, on converting leads to meetings right away. Setting a timely and tailored invite. So if your SDRs can't reach every hot lead at the time of engagement, if sales sequences waste too much time or takes too long, or prioritization is a huge problem for you, or if the inbound outbound prioritization is complicated and you need more of your inbound channels and those hot leads to get that attention right away, to convert right away, we can help you out with that. And then David, you can give your little spiel here on how you can help.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, obviously I'm a proponent, get a playbook, get everything down on paper, which we help sales development teams with. But I also want to mention, sometimes that's too big of a project for companies, and they don't want to go that route. We're opening up a membership site called Tendonplus, where it's just a monthly, membership fee, where you can interact with sales, marketing, sales development leaders, and get exclusive, events and content and training and all that good stuff. And so that's going to launch on April 2nd, not April 1st, but we're taking people on the waiting list right now. So it's at Tenbound Plus. Yeah.
That's really exciting. The links are on the next slide here. If you want to learn about the calendar first process, just go to this landing page. If you want a demo, we'll send you a calendar invite after this webinar, or you can just go to this landing page, and then the monthly subscription packages are on Tenbound's link right here. All right.
And it's product led too, so you can sign up for free, and I
love it.
We'll only call you if it's just good.
All right, Abby, take us home.
All right, thank you all so much for joining us. A huge thank you, Scott and David, for all the valuable insights. We have about 1 minute left. Any final thoughts you'd like to share? Scott, I'll start with you.
It's a journey. Take it one step at a time. Get the thing that is giving you the most pain first and focus on that. And oftentimes I find that start is communication between the teams and alignment there, and then move on to processes and tools and tactics after that.
Yep. A really good point. And so I would just say, flip it around. We look at our sales structure based on our internal needs and the people and the systems that we have. Flip it around. Build your sales structure off of the buyer journey and where they are in the buyer journey, and then backfill, you know, all the roles and responsibilities from there. Easier said than done, but you know, that's how the world's moving these days. So you gotta get with the times.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Everyone have a great rest of the day. Appreciate it.
Thank you.